Fiction Mystery Quilt.
Hi, I'm Linda Smith.
And I'm Sue Ellen Jennings.
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Smith from Flash Fiction Mystery Quilt. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to make some super unique quilt blocks that I think you're going to fall in love with. Do you have scraps left over from making quilts and other projects? Guess what? So do I. I have a ton of scraps, just all different colors, shapes, and sizes. We're going to put these together and make what I call wonky fabric. And out of our wonky fabric, we're going to make beautiful, unique quilt blocks. Let me show you how we do that. So what I've done is I've gone through my scrap bin from previous quilts I've made, and I found colors that I really like, and I wanted to make this wonky piece of fabric out of. I haven't even ironed them, hadn't cut off the ends, the extra pieces, but I do have a starting block. This particular block is a 2-inch by, looks like 1 3/4, and it's going to be my starting piece. From there, I'm just going to add any of these pieces as I feel like adding them. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is go through your scrap bin or cut some strips of fabric, and it doesn't matter what size they are. Like I've got some 1.5 inches. I've got one of these this is a 2.5 inch. And then I've got just really strange looking pieces that I'm going to sew to make this wonky piece of fabric. And from that, we can do all kinds of fun blocks. So I've got my machine set to 1/4 inch seam, and I'm just going to lay my piece of fabric on there. And I'm going to just sew 1/4 inch seam down here, right sides together, of course. Okay, when you've done that, then you're going to take your piece, open it up, and you're going to finger press your first seam down. And I finger press with my dark side so it doesn't show. And then we're going to add another piece. And I'm just going to go through my stack and see what I think looks pretty. So I'm going to lay it down. If you can see this piece, there we go. I'm going to lay it down just like this. And it doesn't have to match up. I personally am going to match this one up, but you don't have to. And I've just got it laying on here straight. And I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch seam here. The idea is that we're going to work our way around this block, adding small pieces of fabric around our starting block, building upon it and building upon it, and that's why it's called a wonky block. Now, right now my seams are fairly straight. I'm going to finger press this. Well, no, it's starting to turn. That's good, because you don't care if your seams are straight. In fact, it's cuter sometimes if they are not. So we're going to go up here to this one, this piece, and I'm going to add another piece of fabric on right here, and again, right sides to right sides. I'm just going to lay it on there. And sew it on. And I can sew crooked, because if you sew crooked, it doesn't matter on this block. You can sew any way you want to. So if I took off at an angle a little bit, which I just did, all it's going to do is make this more interesting. So there was my starting block, and I added this piece, and then I added this piece, and now I'm adding this piece. So as you go, in just a few minutes, we'll show you how you can just trim these up, these extra pieces of fabric that are behind there. But for right now, we're going to keep adding pieces, because I'm going to go with this piece. Yes. And I'm just going to lay it on there. And as long as you're covering your starting square, you are good to go. Now we will trim these pieces up that are right here after we've got some more sewn on. So what we have right now looks like this.
Such a fun way to use up scraps.
And we're going to add another piece right here. And I'm going to go with this tiny piece of the lime green. And here's where I'm going to start pulling things because I've come off my center pretty straight and I want things to start getting wonky. So I'm going to lay this piece at an angle on this. So here's where we get the wonkiness out of. Each time I go, I'm finger pressing the piece that I just added over. Now, as you can see, this shows from behind, so that's going to need to be cut off. So we need to trim that. And we also have this little piece that we can trim off now also. So we're just going to cut it down to 1/4 inch. And same with this, we're just going to trim this down to 1/4 inch. And I'm going to trim off this piece of green. I don't have to be specific. I just trimmed it anywhere. But I'm just going to continue my way around and find pieces of fabric that I want to add on. And I think I'm going to go with this really strange piece right here. And we're going to add it on. And let's see, I want to angle it some, like I did the other one, so I'm turning it off the side a little bit. There. Okay, I like it. And this piece isn't even cut straight, but again, it does not matter because the only thing that's going to show is what you folded over. And so when I fold that one over, we end up with this. So we're looking cute, cute, cute so far. Trim these edges off because I've just sewn them and we don't need them anymore. Sort of like paper piecing, you trim as you go, but you just want to trim it just to keep it from getting boggy. Go over here to this green piece right now. And lay this down right there, right? Because I do want to catch this whole entire green piece, or at least most of it. So if you see, I've left just a little bit of the green out. There we go. So as you can see, we're making a bunch of progress here. It's going to be cute. I have sewn the ugliest piece of fabric I could possibly make. And the reason I did that, I chose colors that just didn't go together. I made what I consider a huge mess piece of fabric. And the reason I did that is because I wanted you to know if you're not good at picking out colors when you're making wonky fabric, it doesn't matter. Because once you cut out your shapes and you put them on your piece of fabric, whatever size fabric you want. I cut these out at 11. I think these can go down to about an 8-inch square The patterns can go down to about an 8-inch square to go into. Once you cut them out and you cut them, trace your pattern on to your
background fabric,
trust me, they're going to be so pretty. You're going to go, oh, I don't have to pick colors. I just have to grab scraps, which is exactly what I did. For this project, you're going to need paper cutting scissors, fabric cutting scissors, doesn't matter what size they are, an Elmer's glue stick, and a fabric marking pen. And I use Soline, but you can use any fabric marking pen you want to. Print out your patterns, the ones that you like. I'm going to be making 3 of them, and cut them out on the lines of the paper. Just repeat for all your pieces. I have all my patterns cut out. I'm going to be teaching you today how to do reverse applique, and with it, it makes some really beautiful designs that is super easy to applique on. So the first thing you're going to want to do, this is not a square, this one is a diamond shape. You are going to fold this in half. And fold it in half again, corner to corner, to find the center of this. So now my center is plainly marked. Well, it happens to be where the letters are. I'm going to do the same thing for this one, and it goes on like this. So it gets folded in half this way, and then folded in half again this way. We're just finding centers for these. And now, there. Center is right where the letters are on it. For your star, you have 2 points, a top and a bottom point. They get folded in half, and you line up the points for it. And fold it in half. I'm going to fold this one in half again and find my center for it. And then we're going to take a little nip out of the center of each of these patterns, just so that we have an opening, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm just going to take a tiny little corner off here using my paper scissors. And now my center opening is marked very plainly, easy to see. I'm going to do the same thing with my diamond shape. And there's its opening, and with my hexagon. Again, I'm just taking the smallest amount off the end to make a tiny little hole there. So that's all I've nipped off. But my center is perfectly marked on all of these. Take your fabric squares that you've already cut, fold them in half, and just give it a good finger press, and do it in half again. Once again, we're hunting for the center, so that's why we're doing this. And I'm going to really press down right here in my corner so that this stands out really good. So repeat for all of your fabric pieces. I have all of mine folded with my centers marked now, and we're going to take our templates and we are going to put them on. Let me move these out of the way so you can see where my center line is, and this is my diamond shape, and it is going to fit right in here with the center going right on my center line. Once I have it there, now I trace it. And again, you can use any fabric pencil or pen you want to. We're just going to trace this out. Can you see my lines I drew right here? get this traced out, and then we're going to do the other shapes exactly the same way. So that one is traced on and it's in the center. And I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to put my star on, and it's going to take a little longer to draw because it has points. I'm going to line up the center fold with my hole on this, and I am going to push it all the way up on there and trace it on as well. I'm hoping you can see that line, and I have one more to trace on, and it is my hexagon. We're going to follow the exact same thing. We're going to put it on, push it in all the way onto the center, and then we are simply going to trace it on as well. I'm going to pop some pins in to hold this folded, and all it does is prevent the two layers of fabric from moving when we're cutting it. And I'm just placing them outside where my pattern is that I'm cutting. And do this for all of your pieces. Now I have all of my pieces pinned. I did not pin into any of the lines that I traced, so I just pinned on the outside. Now it's time to cut out our pattern. Now you do want to be very careful and stay right on your lines. You cannot overcut, because this outside is going to be the frame for your piece of wonky fabric you just made. So I've got a pair of applique scissors I prefer using for this, and that you can use regular scissors. Just take your time and cut. And you can just discard the piece you cut out. I'm going to open this up and give you an idea of what we're looking at. Then you can repeat for all of your other pieces, just exactly like we cut this one out. So now I have a perfectly centered frame for my wonky fabric. And if I were to take my fabric and put it in this, you can get an idea of what a block would look like done like this. Just gorgeous. Ooh, I like that. Now we have all of our fabric frames for our reverse applique, and choose one, and it doesn't matter which one you start with, and then take your piece of wonky fabric, and what I want you to do is to lay this on your fabric, turning it until you find a design in the fabric that you sewed below that you love the way it looks. The star measures 7.5 inches roughly to 7.5 inches point to point. So I know I'm going to need a piece, a square of fabric that's 7.5 inches for this star. So I am going to cut it out first off my wonky block, and you just cut it like you would cut any other fabric. Be aware that the size of the piece of wonky fabric you made, it will make a difference on what you can fit in here. So let's cut star pattern out first. For me is 7.5 inch square I want, and that gives me just a little bit of overlap, obviously way overlap out here, but from the points. So I'm going to cut that out 7.5 inch square, and now I'm just going to put my star down on here. And because it's a star and it goes all different ways, it doesn't totally matter which way I turn this, but you can turn it to where you think it's the prettiest. Once you have it where you want it, We're going to pop a couple of pins in just to hold it, and then we'll go cut out the pieces for our other shapes that we've made. Now, if you notice, I did not cut the whole fabric. I literally just cut my 7.5 inch square out of here. This part does take a little bit as you are moving your piece of fabric around to find what you like the best. But I know that this is where I'm going to cut this piece off. So I am literally just going to cut it right here. And then this will be the piece, however I figure out how to arrange it. Once I get it, then I'm going to pin it so that I can remember where I have it and where I like it the best. I've found where I like this piece the best, and I'm just going to stick a couple of pins in it. Again, hold it in place, nothing, just so I don't lose my placing that I like so much. And now I just have one more to put together, and it is my hexagon. And so I just have to, again, same thing, I'm going to turn my hexagon pattern and keep turning it until I find a place on the fabric that I just really love the design. I picked a place on this fabric that I like as well, and I'm just going to pin in place again just to hold it. And then we're going to come back through and we're just going to touch it with a little bit of glue on the underside, sort of like this. And this will help make sure, by the way, that you have your wonky fabric pressed well. I'm just going to touch it with some glue. It's just going to help hold it in place a little bit. I'll remove my pins and do the same to the other side. And this is Elmer's glue, so it just washes out, but all it's going to do is keep this really nicely in place. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just a little bit of glue all the way around the outer edges with little taps. And we're going to put that down. Now it's held in place. I still am going to use my pins because this is a big piece of fabric back here. And then I'm going to repeat and do this for all my other pieces with a little bit of glue, because we're to the point where we're going to applique this on. This is your star. Obviously, it's going to have way more edges. Concentrate on your points though. And we're ready to go to the machine. For reverse applique, the piece of fabric that you're sewing on is underneath. That's why it's called reverse. But you still stitch right along the lines, half on what we're calling our frame and half on your wonky fabric. Okay, I like to use the zigzag stitch. and I set it at around 1.8 or 2, and this at around 0.6 or 7. This will give you a very, very tiny zigzag stitch, and applique you will find looks beautiful done in a small zigzag stitch. It's great to match the color of the background or whatever piece you're appliquing on with your thread. And if you have embroidery thread, it's a finer weight thread. Finer weight thread will look prettier. If you don't have any, don't worry about it. You can just put it down with a blanket stitch or any stitch that you like and any thread that you like. I'm going to be using my walking foot, but I know not everybody has a walking foot, so I am just going to use my open toe foot so that I will be doing mine just like you're doing yours. Before you start any applique piece, always test your stitch on a piece of fabric just to make sure it's exactly what you're looking for. And that way you can make any changes if you want to before you've started on your piece. And I like that. That's a good little tiny stitch. You want to always start with your needle on the outside fabric, just right on the very edge of it. Remember, my stitching is very tiny, so I need to be right on that edge like that. And then I'm just going to lock my stitch. If you don't have lock stitch on your machine, just pull your threads and you can tie it off. This is a very quick applique project. Take 1 or 2 more stitches. Stop on the outside of your fabric. Lift your foot up, turn, and then just start appliquing down on the other side. This one's easier to see, this corner. If you see, I stopped right on the outside fabric, my frame, and then I'm going to turn. Occasionally you need to lift your needle up ever so little bit and scoot your fabric over to get a really perfect placement. Beautiful and really unique looking block. I'll start the star and show you how I navigate these points, and then I will just let you go ahead and do your own piece. You don't have to watch this whole thing. Because these are straight edges on this star, they're very easy to applique down. You are going to run up to your point, slowing down when you get to it. And I am on it, and I'm on my background fabric. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shake the... So I'm going to simply turn. I'm going to lift my needle and move it to where it's heading on that side of the point, which wasn't a big move at all. And then I'm going to head down this side. Again, when I get to my point, I'm going to get right on it and stopping on this side of the fabric, turn my piece around, lift my needle and scoot over so that my first stitch will start going this way. And that's all there is to points. I'll finish this and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to trim these up on the back side. Have all your blocks appliqued, and the only thing left is to cut off any excess fabric if you want to. This one doesn't have what I consider an overabundance of fabric, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. Now this block I used a big piece and I just left it on. As you can see, I've got all of this fabric over here. So this I will cut off, and all you need to do is just fold this back and leave at least 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch and cut it off. Now you can use your wonky fabric that you have left over from sewing this for any other projects. It makes really cute pieced blocks. And again, I'm not being real picky about how I'm doing this or trimming this. I just know that I need to get all this huge amount of excess off. And I could trim through here as well if I wanted to. Just be careful that you don't cut your background fabric. That was where it was glued on a little bit. That's how you trim them up. Now all you need to do is press, and these blocks are all ready to go into a quilt.